Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us at our Best of Showcase. My name is Alexis Foley, and I am an educational program coordinator with the Cool Y, and I am so glad to have you here today. I'd like to introduce our four speakers from the Glakuho region, which is my home stomping grounds in the Glakuho region. So very excited to introduce this presentation. We have our first presenter today here, Roshona Porter, who serves as the Director of Housing and Residence Life at Western Michigan University, where she provides leadership and oversight to a department of 26 professionals and graduate students, serving over 4,000 residential students. With nearly 2 decades of experience in higher education and student affairs, Roshona has dedicated her career to creating inclusive communities that foster student success and social mobility. We also have Gigi Ward, who is a hall director in housing and residence life at Western Michigan. In her role, she manages a building that is home to the Spectrum Learning Community for LGBTQ plus folks and allies, and many first-time international students. In her time at Western, Gigi has worked to help implement gender-inclusive housing options throughout the housing portfolio. Additionally, Gigi has served on committees that have implemented things like student staff hiring and training, online systems, virtual education, and departmental diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. We also have Valaree Kyser, who serves as the Equity Outreach Specialist and Deputy Title IX Coordinator at Western Michigan, where she provides training on sexual assault prevention and coordinates support for individuals experiencing pregnancy and related conditions. She holds a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary health services, both from Western Michigan. And lastly, we have Jackie Miller, who currently serves as the Assistant Director for Residence Life and Residence Halls and Professional Staff at Western Michigan, where she supervises the professional staff of three complexes and oversees all the hiring, training, selection, and development for the living professional staff. She has spent most of her career working, developing student leaders through various opportunities and developing partnerships across campuses to help continue to meet the changing needs of their students. At this time, I'll pass it over to our presenters.
Thank you so much, Alexis. We really appreciate that beautiful introduction. My name is Valaree Kyser, as Alexis shared, and I will get us started with our presentation today. We are so grateful that you all are here, and we look forward to spending this next hour with you all today. Well, I guess I should have gone back. I'm sorry, Gigi. Let's go back. I'll introduce our presentation. So it's Beyond the Checkbox. As you all know, you joined, transforming lives through social mobility and residential communities. All right. Now let's talk about our learning objectives today. So we hope that from this presentation, you all will have a better understanding of the importance and the value of social mobility, and you will leave with examples on how DEI work can be a part of a departmental culture. And that's what we have done here in residence life and housing and residence life. We also hope that you learn different ways that you can incorporate DEI training in your work, including in spaces where DEI work is being regulated. And then as we're presenting, we would want you to brainstorm ways in which you could incorporate this type of training in the places that you all are today. And I do want to note that yes, we are aware of the changing landscape of DEI and that we are monitoring it and making sure that we remain compliant with all the federal and state laws. There we are, yay! There we are again. So you see our titles and what we do. Alexis gave a great introduction of us, and I do want to just say for me, because I'm kind of the lone one out, that my journey started in housing and residence life, and that's why I'm here today, is because the stuff that we talk about today, the call to action, I was a part of the committee that brought that to housing and residence life. So I'm so grateful to be able to share and be a part of the presentation with you today. All right, so one of the things that we do is we acknowledge our land. We acknowledge um, where we are, how we got here, and we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of what was here before we came. So, land acknowledgement is a process by which individuals are prompted to consider the history of the space they currently inhabit. So today we would like to recognize that Western Michigan University is located on lands historically occupied by the Ojibwe, Odawa, and the Potawatomi nations. Please take a moment to acknowledge and honor this ancestral land of the Three Fires Confederacy and the sacred lands of all Indigenous peoples and their continued presence. We acknowledge that acknowledgement it's not an action plan. So, by putting the land acknowledgement in presentations, that's not what we want you to think deeper than that, is what I'm saying. Is, and like our presentation is beyond the checkbox. So by putting a land acknowledgement there, yes, that may check a box to acknowledge the ancestral land that we're on, but we want you to kind of dig deeper and go beyond that. So that's kind of like a great foundation. So there's still work to be done. Um, we want to move beyond saying the words in the acknowledgement to check it off, as a part of the presentation. But it's important that sometimes the first step is putting in your own work and learning more. So, as you think about it, maybe you don't know what your land acknowledgement is for your particular institutions. And so maybe digging into that, learning more about that. And that's a part of what we'll be talking about today and doing your own work.
So for us, we wanted to make sure we did our own work with this as well. So part of what we'll be talking about today is doing and looking into things, understanding the populations that we're working with, and going into action. And so for part of that is educating ourselves. So we chose to incorporate a QR code for the Three Fires Confederacy, which is acknowledged in our land acknowledgement. So we encourage you to use your phones, look up that QR code to learn more about the tribes that make up the Three Fires Confederacy, especially as a Gulkuho region. This is a confederacy that covers most of our area as a region. And there's a lot of good work being done by this confederacy still. And so we wanted to make sure we knew what we were talking about as we talk about this with others and our action plans and doing our own work and our own research.
All right. Just to give some context about both Western and our Department of Housing and Residence Life, Western Michigan University has an enrollment of just over 17,000 students as of the fall of 2024. We are located in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is in the southwest corner of Michigan. A good fun fact is that 34% of our undergraduate students identify as historically underrepresented or international students. About our department specifically, we have the opportunity to house 3,500 residents across 6 residence halls and 4 apartment complexes. We do that with no live-on requirement for any of our students. Our professional staff, who is largely what we will talk about today, consists of 7 graduate assistants, 6 hall directors, an apartment director, 7 leadership team members who are going to be folks at the assistant director level and above. And then we have 3 central office/administrative support staff, and obviously countless student staff members who also help us get towards our mission. And then we have 8 living learning communities throughout our 5 resident hall spaces that we have.
So as we know with working in housing, there are multiple definitions and acronyms that everyone uses across the country to talk about what they use. And so we wanted to make sure you are aware of some of our definitions that we'll be talking about in a little bit with our presentation. So starting us off with social mobility. So this refers to the movement of a person from one social status to another. So part of what our education and learning, especially with our DEI work, is to make sure that we are providing opportunities that to make sure that we are helping students move from one part in society to a more obtainable, more prestigious, to building more networks, more access to them that may not have been able to be reached by them without our assistance, or the work that we're putting in. So a lot of what we do within our department is making sure we are looking and dismantling those systematic barriers that students may have received, especially if they come from under-resourced communities, and providing them with opportunities and resources to continue to move on and be successful at our institution and within our housing portfolio. Our call to action, you will hear this referred to as CTA, and that is primarily our work that we are doing. And we will go over that in just a little bit. You'll also see doing our own work, so DYOW, which will refer to our process that we do within our staff members. And then we will be using the word DEI for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
All right, so let's talk about our call to action. Jackie already explained kind of what CTA stands for. It's our call to action here at WMU in Housing and Res Life. And the way that we look at it is it's a term, a call to action is a term that's used to prompt or elicit an immediate response. And that's exactly what we did about 5 years ago. So our call to action, it was a response to the murder of George Floyd. It was prompted back in 2020. And so we had two things happen. Well, we had a lot of things happen, right? But there were two kind of major crises that went on. We had the murder of George Floyd, and then we had COVID. And so what happened at our institution, similar to some of the others, is that our students were sent home because of COVID. And it was time that they were being invited back to campus, and we were embarking on life different than we knew it. And so while students had left the institution, kind of outside of some of their safety bubble, there was the George Floyd murder. And so with that, we knew that our students were coming back to the institution different than the way that they had left. And so it was important for our staff, for our housing leadership here to take a stand, essentially, and to reach across the aisles and to let our students know that we were thinking about them. They were on our mind, and we were trying our very best to prepare a space that felt safe for them. And so in doing that, we came up with our call to action. And its purpose was to make sure that our students, our Black students, knew that we knew and recognized what was going on in the world, and we wanted to make sure that they felt safe. We wanted to acknowledge that there were things going on that were really hard. I remember, so Valaree talked about how she was a part of that initial team, as was I. And some of the things that we talked about with our staff was figuring out how could we be a safe landing space for our students as they came back to the institution. How could we do something different than had been done? And so we decided that we wanted to be very loud about the support that was available through Housing and Residence Life. At the time, we did not hear many institutions that were using their voice to talk out about the things that were going on. And so we just really felt like this was our chance to make sure our students and our staff felt supported. And so our next slide will actually read what our call to action was. It says that Black Lives Matter. Housing and Residence Life has a responsibility and a desire to address and dismantle barriers oppressing our Black students and colleagues. And that part is important because we do a lot of work for our students, and it's important to remember that we as staff, faculty at the institution, we are also important. And so it was important for us to include not just our students, but our colleagues as well. We commit to a departmental action plan that will be informed by direct input from the communities we serve. We approach this long-term work with open minds and open hearts. Injustice and inequity cannot have a home with us. Our Black community and all community members with marginalized identities unequivocally deserve affirmation, respect, and equality. And so that is where we started. Our call to action, we were very careful and intentional about the words that we chose. And so you'll see in there that direct input from the communities that we serve. That's important for a conversation we will have later. And then also, unequivocally, we know that these communities deserve affirmation, respect, and equity. And so I'll have Gigi will actually take us to our website, maybe. And what we want to show you is that it was important for us not to just determine a call of action, but actually talk about the work that we do. Maybe it won't work. Okay, that's okay. Oh, she's getting it together. She was prepared for this. So this is our website here in Housing and Residence Life, and you will see that our call to action is called out actually on our webpage, and it still is. So that was in 2020, and here we are in 2025, and it's still there. And we'll talk. Gigi will go into kind of the evolution next on how we got into what we call doing your own work. But these are our vision, our pillars, and just kind of how we support our call to action and how we allow people to see what we stand for. It was important for us to put that out front. At the bottom of the website, you will see our plan and then our yearly progress. And so it was important to us not to just be performative, but to actually put work to what we were doing. And so through the years, we have reports of our initiatives through the years. You will notice that 24, 25 is not there. We'll talk a little bit about that because we've had some evolution since we have moved through this. So that is kind of our outlay and how we talk to our partners about what we're doing in terms of our call to action. You can find it there on our website.
All right. So, Shoni talked about doing your own work. And obviously, we're talking about kind of the foundation that we laid in terms of our call to action. But then we talk about the actual work piece of it. And so, as we've kind of been saying, and you'll hear throughout, it's important that we are not just saying the things, but doing the things. And so, what you can see is this is a document which we call doing your own work. And these documents, this specific one is for our hall director and our apartment director staff. And what you can see is that this is actually laid out in our performance management plans. So this is something that is in our evals that we have at the end of the year. And this is going to lay out things that we need to complete in our year based on our call to action. So you will see for us, we have things like bulletin boards in building that we complete. We have staff meeting activities that we complete with our student staff members. There's individual development in there. So choosing something that makes sense for you, whether it is reading a book or attending a webinar, going to a conference, a class, whatever that looks like. It is meant to be a kind of choose your own adventure situation. And something I really just want to note on here is that when we talk about the checkbox, this is kind of the checkbox part of like things you check off to complete. But for us, this is truly a baseline. You will see that one of the things on here is a D activity once per month at a staff meeting. Pretty much across the board, all of our hall directors are doing activities weekly. In staff meetings, we are doing multiple bulletin boards. Most of us are reading multiple books a year and going to events far beyond what is on this sheet. And that partly speaks to the part of building a departmental culture. So for most of us, doing diversity, equity, inclusion work is important to us, and it is outside of just like having to do it because we're being told to do it. A lot of us have marginalized identities and enjoy talking about those identities and educating others. And so truly like throughout the department, you will see that most people are doing what is above and beyond this document because they want to, not because they have to, which I think is really important when we talk about culture.
And I will add, with us being on the doing your own work, kind of the way that we got there, as we talked about our call to action, the doing your own work came up because as Valaree mentioned earlier, the committee that put together the CTA, as we kind of went through the process, what we learned was that we are all at different levels. And it was truly about everyone doing their own work. And so the culture became, what is it that you're going to do? I can't make you do anything. What's important to me may not be important to you. And so as we started to have the conversation, as we laid the table, essentially what we did was we invited people to the table to have more open conversations. And it was determined that it was time for people to do their own work. It became a culture. It became important. This work was not separate. It wasn't a part of a checkbox. It was truly ingrained in the fabric that of who we are as a department. And so that's kind of how we went from the CTA to doing your own work, or the DYOW. So I apologize, I didn't give that up front.
So one of the things when we talk about our CTA and our department is that we make sure that this is through all levels. And so we have documents for each level that we have in our department, from our graduate assistants, our hall directors, our leadership team, and our central office staff. Each of those documents incorporates part of their work that they do. So the central office staff has more of a customer service based initiatives within theirs. For our graduate assistants, we want to make sure that we incorporate their classroom work into their levels. Hall directors working with their direct staff members. And for our leadership team, making it that it's an encompassment of the entire department and some of the work that we are doing, from our presentations to our bulletin boards, and who we are serving in that. And one of our philosophies with making sure that it is because of all levels is that we are educating ourselves to educate others. If we are talking the talk, we got to learn about the talk, and make sure that we know what we're talking about, growing with our students, learning more about who our students are as they are coming in. Our populations continue to change across campuses and years. And so we want to make sure we know that we are doing our best to serve those populations that we are working with. One of the things that we've seen as we've developed our CTA and doing our own work is we are setting that example for our students. So Gigi was talking about with our student staff members that they are getting stuff pretty much weekly during their staff meetings, our RAs, CAs, LCAs, and resident managers. But one of the things that we've seen with that is that our students are growing more passionate about those areas because they are seeing it. It is part of the culture. It is something that you know when you come in as a student staff member, that we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be addressing different areas of diversity, equity, inclusion. We want to hear about what's going on, current issues, have those dialogues with one another, even if they are disagreements, so that way we can learn and have those conversations and learn from one another. In that too as well, we are continuing to enhance our awareness with working with our staffs. So making sure that we are having the most inclusive practices and considering all of our families and students who are coming in. We have students from various states, different socioeconomic levels. We have students who may not even have the family support with us, and especially we have programs on campus for students who have aged out of the foster care system. And so knowing we have multiple different populations, international students, what can we do and make sure that we are aware of what we are saying and serving them and addressing and listening to what they need. And that goes into helping us make informed decisions as a department. So making sure we are continuing to discuss our policies, that they are inclusive, and that we are not setting those systematic barriers for our students to be successful and move up socially. And so this helps bring different lenses. It helps us ask some of those critical questions to families, to parents, to decision makers, to be like, what is it that we are doing? And are we making sure that we are setting those barriers and giving students all access that we need, and that we are serving all of our students, not just one population of students. And then one of the biggest things is that we are continuously learning, that we're developing ourselves professionally and personally with all of our opportunities that we take place with. And that it's not just focused, as we talk about, our call to action was very focused on Black students. But we also want to make sure we are serving all of our historically marginalized communities. And so having various topics, different learning opportunities, And we're continually sharing those insights with one another, whether it's presentations in our staff meetings, different speakers that we are encouraging each other to go to. On all of our professional staff meeting agendas, call to action is continuously there. It's a discussion that we are learning about the books that people are going to, the presentations that are on campus and in our community, the conferences that we're attending, making sure that this is something that is present and it's part of who we are as a department, not just something that we say that we do, but we are acting it out and showing it. So one of the things that we have seen with our call to action is that it has had an impact on our recruitment with our professional staff, specifically our hall directors and our graduate assistants. And so we usually vary every year in how many positions that we are currently filling. So in the 2022 cycle, we interviewed 38 different professionals between graduate assistants and our hall director positions. In 2023, we saw that number double. As we also became more focused on our CTA and definitely created more of an online presence with it. And one of the interesting things as we were kind of tracking and listening to our responses from our interview applicants was the reference to our CTA. And we had 100% of our candidates actually referred back to it. When we interview candidates, we send our CTA out to all of our candidates so they are aware of this is what we stand for. And most of them had never seen that stand taken at a department. They knew what we were talking about. They knew where our views were and what we were doing for our students. And so that has continued to be something prevalent with our candidates. But it's also helping our retention as well. So for the 24-25 recruitment cycle, we have retained all of our hall directors, which is something that is not normal for us, as we do have a term limit as well in our positions. So all of our hall directors have seen that passion and have chosen to stay within it. And throughout these years, our GA pool continues to grow as our portfolio actually has decreased and there have been less positions. We are still seeing that number increase. Our GA pool from last year also increased with different identities and programs. So we've had a lot more international students apply for our positions, individuals who have different identities, different parts of the country, but also different academic programs. We've had a variety of people who have applied, knowing that they would be working for a department that has values that align with them.
So let's talk about continuous evolution. Jackie mentioned how we believe in continuing education. That is so true. What happens each year is that we reevaluate our goals. And it's not just something that we do once a year, but something that we are doing continuously. And that is through all of our staff, but we also listen to our students and their families. As we have conversations with people, as we hear, sometimes they come through complaints, right? Let's be real, we get complaints. And so we take all of that information and we continue to reevaluate our goals as we go forward. We have started to reconstruct our you're doing your own work. And that has come a little bit naturally because as we know better, we do better. It is still in place, but one of the things that we have done is just last year, our Housing and Residence Life Department went through, we brought an outside person in to come in and kind of help us reestablish or establish, if you will, our mission, vision, and values. And as we were having those conversations, what we determined was that equity was something that was very, very, very high on our list. And so, Gigi, you can go ahead and go to that website. We completed that kind of assessment, and here is kind of where we land. I will save you reading through our vision and our values, our vision and our mission, but what I do think is important to point out is that within our mission, that last piece talking about being rooted in safety, equity, innovation, collaboration, and action, we are champions, we're problem solvers. And so as such, the values that we stand on, growth, relationships, equity, and well-being. Equity is very high on our list. And so what we've done is we've taken that during your own work. We've taken our CTA, and similar to what Jackie mentioned, it is important for us to make sure that we are of support for all of our marginalized identities, and all of our students in general, right? But sometimes that means that something that we offer may look different for a different identity. We need to make sure that we are available to have those conversations and to be supportive for all of them, because we want all of our students to grow. We want to build relationships, and make sure that their well-being is out in front of us. And so some of the things that we are doing, is diving deep into our policies, into our procedures, the things that govern who we are, and making sure that we're going through them in a deep dive to remove any barriers. We have enlisted various focus groups over the past, I believe it's the past 2 years, in order to hear from different students on things that they are experiencing, not just at the institution, but more specifically in housing and residence life. And that information is being taken as we continue to evolve and update our policies and our procedures to make sure that they are as barrier-free as possible. We are building a new facility that will open in fall of 26. It is a brand new residence hall, and we have considered our values as we considered what that physical space will actually look like. One of the things that our campus struggles with, specifically in housing and res life, is ADA accommodations. We knew that. And so we were able to have those conversations in order to have input on building this new facility so that we can make sure we are doing what we need to do for all of our students. So those are some of the examples that we have adopted as we continue to move forward, and do things, as we continue to improve on our doing your own work and call to action. And then I believe, so collaboration with all levels of staff. We have truly reached out to our student staff. Like I said, student staff, our leadership team, our professional staff, our central office, administrative staff, families, our students. And so really it is a collaboration with everyone to make sure we are appropriately outfitted to support all of the students that we have here on campus. And then there's flexibility. So earlier, I mentioned that we are all at different levels, as are our students. And so we are making sure to be flexible along this journey, because we also know that we will have different staff coming in and out, which they will be at different places. Right now, we have a staff who DE&I is at the front of their mind. They are comfortable going and sitting at different tables and asking difficult questions. That's important, right? We realize that we may have a different staff member who comes in who's at a different place. It is up to us to make sure that we support them in a way that they begin to be comfortable sitting at those tables. And through the frameworks that we have set up, we believe that we are able to do that. And so that's kind of a look at overall, a quick overview of the things that we have going on in our housing and residence life, to make sure to support all of our diverse identities that we have living with us.
All right, so something that we had the opportunity to do during our Glakuho presentation was actually do an activity called Four Corners. Some folks might be familiar with it, but it gave us an ability to have people really have really great conversations around where their department and institutions are at and have some idea sharing. Obviously, in the space, we unfortunately are not able to offer the same level of interaction, but we have modified that activity into a worksheet per se. That on the next screen, we will have our emails, and we would love to send you this worksheet if you are interested. It can be used both personally for you yourself, in a departmental meeting, whatever that looks like, to kind of start having these conversations and work through what you and your department and or institution can do to implement more practices, or have a departmental culture that really reflects belonging and social mobility work. And then those are our emails. And we would love to answer questions, I believe, at this point in time.
So if any of the participants, if you'd like to unmute yourself to ask a question, we have a Q&A function in the chat. But if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can just raise your hand, use the raise hand function, and I can unmute you.
I think I saw a question that says, why were the reports not included for 23, 24, 24, 25? 23, 24 is there, but 24, 25 is not. And that is because we have switched the way that we're doing things. So we talked about how we were working on a kind of a new, making sure that we were working on our vision, mission, and all of those things. So that report did not go up. It's not that we weren't doing the things, but our focus was on making sure that we were right aligning ourselves with how we were to be moving forward. So last year was kind of spent doing that. So we did the things, but didn't report out on the things, if you will. Yeah, absolutely, Ben. Great way to direct pro Devo for folks. Absolutely, Patrick. It is. Yeah.
And I will add for the Pro Devo part, one of the intents with it as well is we want to be inclusive of everyone's learning styles as well, because we understand some people, including myself, webinars aren't the best way for learning. We know not everyone has the opportunity to go to conferences or has a desire to, so we wanted to make sure as we have professional development opportunities that encompasses how people learn themselves.
Any other questions that folks have?
Are the people out there? Can we get a reaction or something to know you're there? Yay! Awesome. Oh, yeah, you're out there. Awesome.
Love
Was
that.
this helpful? I mean, even if you don't have a question, just hearing some feedback, some thoughts would be amazing. As we always continue to evolve and grow, we want to hear what your thoughts are.
Awesome. Glad to hear that, Bill. Thank you. We really appreciate you all joining us. Our emails are there. So even if you want to send us an email to ask more questions, we will send you, obviously, we'll send you the form, but also if you have more questions, we would love to be available to have conversations because that's also how we learn too, right? Is being in community with other folks. So please feel free to reach out via those emails.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Uh, Yeah, definitely resources for RA meetings, 100%. I will say a lot of us, we're also actively working on creating, we have a departmental committee that does, it's a DI departmental committee, and they are working on creating a space where we just have a bank of like activities, videos, different stuff like that. And I can tell you those activities range from like doing identity wheels to watching videos. I know one of my colleagues this week in their staff meeting is looking at majority Latinx cities in Michigan and having her staff members split up into groups and learn about those cities and how those groups kind of came to those cities. There's a wide range of stuff that happens. So if you have anything specific to, definitely let us know, but we would love to.
And I acknowledge that last comment.
Well, everyone, please join me in thanking our presenters today. This was a great presentation, very timely and informative, and very, very important. Uh, I invite you all to join us for our last Best of Showcase, which is actually taking place tomorrow, September 26th. That is going to be for the Northwest Akuhos session, and it is titled Supporting Disabled Employees and Colleagues on College and University Campuses. That is going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can find the link to that registration in the chat, as well as the link to the details for that session. So thank you again to our presenters, and thank you to everybody who attended. We appreciate you.